Jake sat in his small repair shop on Station Harmony, reviewing the day's work orders on his tablet. 3 climate control fixes, 2 air filter replacements, and 1 mystery job that just came in from the draconian Imperial Wing. He read the request twice to make sure he understood it correctly. The Draconians never called independent contractors. They had their own engineers, their own systems, their own pride. Jake had worked on the station for 5 years and had never once set foot in their section. Now they wanted him to fix a heating system, and they wanted him today. He grabbed his toolkit and headed for the door. His friend Lisa worked at the station's coordination office, and she always knew what was happening before anyone else did. Jake found her at her desk, surrounded by displays showing station activity. "Did you see the job request I just got?" Jake asked. Lisa looked up and nodded. "The draconian one? Yeah, I processed it. Strange, right?" "Very strange. What do you know about it?" She leaned back in her chair. "Not much. The request came from Ambassador. She's young for a draconian diplomat, maybe 40 standard years. The payment is normal, nothing special. But Jake, be careful in there. The draconians are proud people. They don't like outsiders in their space." "Why call me then?" "That's what worries me. Something must be wrong if they're asking for help." Jake thanked her and made his way to the Imperial Wing. The station's neutral corridors gave way to draconian architecture. Everything became darker, warmer, decorated with metals that looked like bronze and gold. Heat lamps lined the walls. Draconians came from a hot world, and they needed high temperatures to feel comfortable. 2 guards stood at the entrance. They were tall, covered in dark red scales, with eyes that watched Jake like he was a threat. One of them spoke into a communication device. A moment later, a female draconian appeared. She was smaller than the guards, with lighter scales that showed hints of copper in the light. "I am," she said, her voice was tight with stress. "You are the technician." "Jake, I got your repair request." She looked him over, clearly unhappy about needing a human. "Follow me. Do not touch anything except what you are told to repair. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not wander." Jake followed her through corridors that should have been full of activity but were almost empty. The few draconians they passed stopped and stared at him. Some whispered to each other. The atmosphere felt wrong, like the air before a storm. They reached a section with even more guards. These wore different armor, marked with symbols Jake didn't recognize. Spoke to them in the draconian language, her tone formal and careful. The guards looked at Jake with what might have been anger or disgust, but they stepped aside. "The heating system for these chambers has failed," explained as they walked. "Our engineer attempted repairs but made the situation worse. The temperature has dropped to dangerous levels." "Dangerous for your species?" "Yes, we require heat. Cold is painful for us, and prolonged exposure can be deadly." Jake wondered again why they were calling him. Your engineer couldn't fix his own mistake. Stopped walking. She turned to face him, and Jake saw something in her eyes he hadn't expected: fear. "The engineer has been reassigned," she said carefully. "We cannot afford another failure. These chambers are important." She didn't say who lived in the chambers, but Jake was starting to guess. The heavy guard presence, the formal atmosphere, the fear in his voice, someone important was in there. They entered a control room filled with environmental systems. Jake saw immediately that the setup was a mess. Someone had tried to integrate draconian technology with the station's standard systems, and they had done it badly. Junction boxes were cross-wired, temperature sensors were in the wrong positions, and the main heating coil had been damaged by too much power. "How long has the heat been out?" Jake asked. 16 hours. "And before that, how long has this system been having problems?" Hesitated. "Several weeks, small failures that grew worse." Jake set down his toolkit and started examining the system more closely. This wasn't a quick fix. Someone had made multiple mistakes trying to patch a failing system instead of addressing the root cause. He would need to rebuild entire sections. "This will take several hours," he said. "Can you fix it?" "Yes, but I need to shut down parts of the system to work safely. The temperature will drop further before it gets better." Closed her eyes briefly. "Do what you must, I will inform the occupant." She left through an inner door, and Jake heard her speaking in low tones to someone beyond. The reply was faint, a voice weakened by illness or age. Returned looking even more stressed than before. "He wants to know what you are doing," she said. "He?" The occupant, he asks that you explain your work. Jake wasn't sure how to respond to that. Usually, clients just wanted the problem fixed and didn't care about the details. I can do that. Should I speak to him directly or through you? I will convey your words. Jake began working, carefully disconnecting damaged components. As he worked, he called out explanations, would disappear through the inner door, then return with questions. The voice beyond asked surprisingly detailed questions about human engineering methods and why Jake was making certain choices. After an hour of this awkward relay system, the voice called out directly. Tell the human to come here. I wish to see him work. Looked horrified. My lord, that is not necessary. It is my wish. She turned to Jake, her expression somewhere between apology and warning. He wishes to meet you. This is highly irregular. Please show proper respect. Jake wiped his hands on a cloth and followed her through the inner door. The room beyond was dark except for heat lamps focused on a raised platform. On the platform lay a draconian unlike any Jake had seen. He was ancient, his scales faded to a dull brown. His breathing was labored, his movements slow. But his eyes were sharp and clear as they studied Jake. You are the technician, the old draconian said. His voice was weak but still carried authority. Yes, sir, Jake. Tells me you can repair the heating system. I can. The damage is extensive, but the repairs are within my skill. Why is it taking so long? Jake explained about the cross-wiring and damaged components. He didn't simplify it or talk down. He spoke the way he would to anyone who asked an honest question. The old draconian listened carefully. Continue your work. I would like to understand what you do. Bring your tools here. Work where I can see you. Started to protest, but the old draconian silenced her with a gesture. Jake went back to the control room and gathered what he needed. He set up in a corner of the chamber where he could access the junction points while remaining visible to the dying emperor. Jake worked methodically, replacing damaged junction points one by one. The emperor watched from his platform, occasionally asking questions about what Jake was doing. Stood near the wall, tense and uncomfortable with the whole situation. Why did you become a repair technician? The emperor asked after a long silence. Jake looked up from his work. My father taught me. He said fixing things people need is honest work. And you believe this? Yes, people need heat, air, clean water. Making sure those systems work right matters. The emperor made a sound that might have been agreement. Most species view such work as beneath them, something for lower classes. Jake reconnected a power relay before responding. That seems backward. If the work is necessary and helps people, why would it be beneath anyone? You speak strangely for someone in the presence of an emperor. Should I speak differently? Jake asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Made a strangled sound. The emperor, however, seemed amused. No, continue as you are, it is refreshing. Jake returned to his work, checking voltage levels across the repaired sections. The emperor shifted on his platform, clearly in discomfort despite the heat lamps focused on him. You are in pain, Jake observed. I am dying, the emperor said simply. Pain is part of that process. I'm sorry. Why? You did not cause it. Age causes it. Time causes it. Jake tested another connection. Still seems worth saying. Nobody should suffer if it can be helped. Can you help it? Not the dying part. That's beyond my skills. But I can get your heat working so you're at least comfortable. The emperor was quiet for a moment. You have an interesting philosophy, human, very practical. It's the only one that makes sense to me. We can't fix everything, but we should fix what we can. Stepped forward. My lord, you should rest. Speaking tires you. I have little time left for rest, the emperor replied. I would rather speak with someone honest. Tell me, Jake, what do you know of draconian culture? Not much, Jake admitted. You come from a hot world, you value strength and honor. You've been a major power in the galaxy for thousands of years. Standard knowledge, but do you know why we value strength? Jake thought about it while he worked. Most species value strength in some form, usually because life was hard for them at some point. Perceptive, ours is volcanic, unstable, filled with dangers. Only the strong survived long enough to build civilization. That history shaped our culture deeply. Makes sense, humans had a similar path. Earth wasn't easy on us either. The emperor's eyes sharpened with interest. Tell me about Earth. Jake continued working as he talked. Earth has every kind of climate: frozen poles, burning deserts, wet jungles, dry plains. Humans spread across all of it. We had to adapt to extreme cold and extreme heat, sometimes in the same location across different seasons. Remarkable, most species evolve in one climate type. That's what I've learned working here. Most species need specific conditions. Makes my job easier in some ways. If I know the species, I know what temperature and humidity they need. And humans. We're flexible. We can handle a wide range as long as it doesn't go to the extremes for too long. The Emperor considered this. Perhaps that is why you are good at this work. You understand many different needs. Jake smiled slightly. Never thought of it that way, but maybe you're right. He finished reconnecting the main heating coil and started the system startup sequence. This is the critical part. If I did everything right, the heat should start flowing in about 2 minutes. They waited in silence, watched the environmental readouts nervously. The Emperor simply watched Jake, his expression unreadable. The system hummed to life. Warm air began flowing through the vents. The temperature readouts started climbing slowly. "It's working," said, relief clear in her voice. Jake monitored the startup carefully, making sure all systems were balanced and stable. Temperature should reach optimal levels in about 20 minutes. The system is running correctly now. "You are certain?" the Emperor asked. "Yes, the repairs are solid. Your engineer's main mistake was trying to force incompatible systems to work together. I've rebuilt the integration points properly. It should run smoothly now." The Emperor closed his eyes briefly as the warmth began to fill the room. "You have my gratitude, Jake." "Just doing my job." "No, you did more than that. You worked with care and skill. You spoke to me as an equal, not as a subject. These things matter." Jake began packing up his tools. "You asked me questions, I answered them. That's just normal conversation. For you, perhaps for me, it is rare. Most speak to me with fear or calculation. They want something or fear punishment. You simply spoke truth. I don't have any reason to lie. And I'm not part of your empire, so I don't have anything to fear." The Emperor opened his eyes again. "You fear nothing." "I didn't say that. I fear plenty of things. Failing at a repair job, letting someone down, making a mistake that hurts people. But talking to someone honestly, that's not scary." Moved closer to the Emperor's platform. "My lord, the human should leave now. You need rest." In a moment, the Emperor's gaze remained on Jake. "How much do I owe you for this repair?" Jake pulled out his tablet and calculated quickly. "Parts and labor come to 400 credits, standard rate." "That seems low for saving an Emperor's life." "I didn't save your life, I fixed your heater, there's a difference." The Emperor made that amused sound again. "Very well, 400 credits will process the payment." Jake nodded and turned to leave. He was almost at the door when the Emperor spoke again. "Jake, come here once more." Jake walked back to the platform, curious but not worried. The Emperor studied him for a long moment. "You brought warmth back to my final days. That is no small thing. I wish to honor this service." "Really, it's not necessary. It was just a repair job." "Perhaps to you, to me it was more. Will you extend your hand?" Jake wasn't sure what was happening, but he held out his right hand. The Emperor slowly lifted his own hand, scaled and ancient, and placed it over Jake's palm. The Emperor spoke words in the Draconian language, his voice stronger than it had been all afternoon. The words were formal, ceremonial, nothing Jake could understand. A warmth flowed from the Emperor's hand into Jake's palm. Not the warmth of heat, but something else, something deeper. A golden glow surrounded their joined hands for a moment, then faded. Gasped, outside the chamber, Jake heard guards drop to their knees with loud clangs of armor against floor. The Emperor released Jake's hand. "You have the blessing of the forge. May it guide your hands in the work you do." Jake looked at his palm. A faint golden pattern was visible on his skin, like a circuit diagram mixed with flames. It didn't hurt, it just was. "What did you do?" Jake asked quietly. "I gave you something my people reserve for master craftsmen and honored builders. You are marked now as one who brings warmth and life through your craft." Stepped forward, her voice shaking. "My lord, this blessing has not been given to an outsider in over 1,000 years. The council will question this decision." "Let them question, I am still emperor and this is my choice." He looked at Jake. "You may not understand the significance now. In time, you will." Simply continue your work as you have always done. The blessing will protect you and guide you. Jake didn't know what to say. I don't know if I deserve this. You reminded me why civilization exists to care for one another in practical ways, to see the worth in honest work, to speak truth without fear. If that is not worthy of honor, then our culture has lost its way. The Emperor settled back onto his platform, clearly exhausted from the effort. Go now. Thank you for the warmth, Jake, in body and in spirit. Jake left the chamber in a daze, following him. In the corridor, guards stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to anger to awe. Word was already spreading through the Imperial wing. Jake made it back to his shop before the messages started flooding his communication device. Requests for services from species he had never worked with before. Questions from news outlets. Even a formal inquiry from the Galactic Council's diplomatic office. He stared at his device, completely lost. Lisa arrived 10 minutes later, moving faster than Jake had ever seen her move. She burst through his door without knocking. What did you do? She demanded. I fixed a heater. Jake, Draconian officials are asking me about you. Station security wants to know if there's been an incident. Half the diplomatic wing is in an uproar. What actually happened in there? Jake showed her his palm. The golden pattern was still faintly visible against his skin. Lisa stared at it, her eyes growing wide. Is that what I think it is? The Emperor called it the blessing of the forge. He said it's for craftsmen and builders. Lisa sat down heavily in one of Jake's work chairs. Jake, do you understand what this means? The draconian imperial blessing hasn't been given to a non-draconian in centuries, maybe longer. So everyone keeps telling me, but I don't understand why he did it. I just fixed his heating system. There has to be more to it than that. Jake thought back to the conversation with the Emperor. We talked while I worked. He asked questions about my work, about Earth, about why I do repairs. We just talked like normal people. You talked to the Emperor like normal people. Should I have done it differently? Lisa put her head in her hands. Most people would have been too terrified to speak at all, or they would have been so formal it wouldn't have been a real conversation. You just treated him like any other person, didn't you? He was a person, an old, dying person who was cold and in pain. Why would I treat him badly? That's not what I meant. Lisa looked up at him. Jake, the Draconians have a very strict culture. Status matters, hierarchy matters. You're supposed to show fear and submission around their leadership. That sounds exhausting. It's their culture, and you just ignored all of it, and somehow the Emperor liked that enough to give you a sacred blessing. She stood up and started packing. This is going to have consequences, big ones. She was right. Over the next 2 days, the situation grew more complicated. Visited Jake's shop to explain things in more detail. She looked tired and stressed, like she hadn't slept since Jake had left the Imperial wing. You must understand the position this blessing puts you in, she said. In our culture, the blessing of the forge is considered sacred. It marks you as chosen by the ancestors themselves, recognized by the imperial bloodline as worthy. I didn't ask for it. That doesn't matter, you have it now. Some of our people see this as a great honor. The Emperor's final wisdom, recognizing worth beyond species and status. And the others. His expression darkened. Others are outraged. They see it as an insult to our traditions. A human, an outsider, receiving what many draconians spend lifetimes hopping to earn. What do they want me to do about it? Some demand you return the blessing. Others want you to undergo trials to prove you are worthy of it. A few extremists are calling for worse. Jake looked at his palm. How do I return it? You can't, the blessing is permanent. Only death removes it. Then, I guess the people who want it returned are going to be disappointed. Almost smiled at that. You are remarkably calm about this. I'm not calm, I'm confused and worried, but getting upset won't change anything. The Emperor gave me this blessing for his own reasons. I can't undo that, so what happens next? The Emperor died last night. Jake felt a weight settle in his chest. He had known it was coming, but that didn't make the news easier. I'm sorry. Don't be, he died warm and at peace. Your repair gave him comfort in his final hours. Paused. He left a recorded message. In it, he defends his choice to bless you. He says that a civilization that cannot honor the simple act of bringing warmth to the cold has lost its way. That sounds like something he would say. His message is dividing our empire. Traditionalists reject his words, reformers embrace them. You have become a symbol, Jake, whether you want to be or not. Jake didn't want to be a symbol. He wanted to fix environmental systems and help people stay comfortable. But he was starting to understand that what he wanted might not matter anymore. The pressure increased over the following week. Jake received offers he couldn't believe. A major corporation wanted to hire him as their chief environmental engineer at 10 times his current income. A diplomatic coalition offered him a position as a cultural liaison. 3 different draconian houses sent formal invitations for him to visit their worlds. He turned them all down. Every single offer, no matter how lucrative or prestigious. He was a repair technician. That's what he knew how to do, and that's what he was going to keep doing. Lisa thought he was crazy. Jake, some of these offers would set you up for life. You could retire in 5 years. And do what? Sit around feeling useless. I like my work. Even now, with all this attention and pressure, the attention will die down eventually. People will find something else to care about. But the attention didn't die down. It shifted. The Galactic Council formally requested Jake appear before them to discuss the diplomatic implications of the blessing. Jake refused. Draconian factions continued to debate the legitimacy of what the Emperor had done. News outlets kept asking for interviews. Finally, Lisa convinced Jake that he needed to make one public statement. Just one, to clarify his position and maybe reduce some of the chaos. Jake agreed to a single interview at the station's public forum. A journalist named Karen Phillips from the Galactic News Network sat across from him, her recording devices active. Jake, you are at the center of what some are calling the biggest cultural controversy in the Draconian Empire in decades. How does that feel? Confusing, mostly. I fixed a heater. That's all I set out to do. But you received the blessing of the Forge from Emperor X himself. That's not nothing. I'm not saying it's nothing. I'm saying I didn't ask for it or expect it. The Emperor made a choice. I'm honored by it, but I don't fully understand it. Do you think you deserve the blessing? Jake thought about that. I don't know what deserving it means. I did my job well. I treated the Emperor with respect. If that's worthy of honor in Draconian culture, then I'm grateful. If it's not, then I'm still just going to keep doing my work. Some Draconians say the blessing should never have been given to a human. I can't change what people think. The Emperor had his reasons. He said I reminded him why civilization exists. To care for one another in practical ways. If people disagree with that philosophy, that's their right. What did you plan to do now? The same thing I was doing before. Fix environmental systems. Help people stay comfortable. Serve anyone who needs repairs, draconian or otherwise. You're not going to accept any of the lucrative offers you've received. No, I'm a repair technician. That's who I am. A blessing doesn't change that. The interview aired across multiple stations and networks. Reactions were mixed. Some praised Jake's humility. Others saw his refusal to accept a higher position as an insult. The debate continued. But something shifted. A few days after the interview, Jake received a repair request from a draconian cargo ship. The crew was from House, one of the most traditional and conservative houses. They were known for their strict adherence to old customs and their opposition to the Emperor's blessing. Their life support system was failing, and they needed help. Jake was the only qualified technician available at the station. He accepted the job and boarded their ship with his toolkit. The crew watched him with clear suspicion and barely concealed hostility. Their captain, a veteran named Or, met him at the airlock. We do not like this situation, Or said bluntly, but we need repairs and you are here. Understood, show me the life support systems. The problem was significant but fixable. A cascade failure in the climate control had damaged multiple components. Jake worked efficiently, explaining what he was doing when the draconian engineer asked questions. He showed them what had gone wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. The crew watched him work. Their suspicion gradually shifted to curiosity. Jake treated them the same way he treated everyone, with professional courtesy and straightforward communication. When he finished or inspected the repairs personally, the work is sound. It should run well now. Just keep up with regular maintenance on the filters. What is your fee? Jake calculated quickly. 800 credits, standard rate for this type of repair. or pulled out a credit chip worth 3,000 credits. Take this. That's too much. You fixed our life support, you kept us alive, take the payment. I charge standard rates, 800 credits, that's fair. The captain stared at him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he gave a slight nod of respect. The Emperor word spread about Jake's interaction with the house crew. More draconian ships began requesting his services. Some came to test him, trying to find fault with his work or character. Others came out of genuine need. A few came simply out of curiosity, wanting to see the human who had received an imperial blessing. Jake treated every job the same way. He assessed the problem, fixed it properly, charged his standard rates, and moved on to the next job. The mark on his palm occasionally glowed faintly when he worked with heating systems, but Jake never made a show of it. He just did his work. 3 weeks after the Emperor's death, visited Jake's shop again. She looked different than before, less stressed, more confident. The new Emperor wishes to speak with you, she said. Jake looked up from a filtration unit he was repairing. The new Emperor. X's daughter, Empress X. She has taken the throne and wishes to thank you personally for the kindness you showed her father. Is this a formal summons? No, she requests your presence, but she will not command it. She understands you are not a subject of the Empire. Jake cleaned his hands and considered, what does she want from me? To talk, nothing more. She has questions, and she hopes you will answer them honestly, as you did with her father. Whenever you are willing, she will make time for you. Jake agreed to go the next day. He found himself once again walking through the Imperial wing, but this time the atmosphere was different. Less hostile, more curious. Guards still watched him carefully, but without the anger he had seen before. The new Empress received him in a smaller chamber, not the throne room. She was younger than Jake expected, perhaps 60 standard years, which was young for draconian leadership. Her scales were deep blue with silver highlights, and her eyes were sharp and intelligent like her father's had been. Jake, she said, thank you for coming. Your Majesty, Jake replied, not sure of the proper protocol. Please sit. I do not wish for this to be a formal audience. I wish to understand what my father saw in you. Jake sat in the chair she indicated. I'm not sure I can explain that. Tell me what happened, all of it from your perspective. So Jake did. He explained about the repair request, meeting, finding the damaged heating system. He talked about working while the Emperor watched, about their conversations, about the blessing he hadn't expected or asked for. X listened without interrupting. When Jake finished, she was quiet for a long moment. My father was dying for months, she said finally. In that time, many people came to see him. Nobles, generals, advisors, family. All of them spoke to him with either fear or calculation. They wanted final favors or they wanted to position themselves for the succession. No one simply talked to him. I didn't know who he was at first, and when I figured it out, it didn't change how I treated him. Why not? Jake thought about it, because he was still just a person who needed help. The title didn't change that. Most beings cannot separate a person from their position. My father spent his entire life being treated as the Emperor, not as X. You gave him something precious in his final hours. You spoke to him as an equal. Should I have done differently? No, X smiled slightly. You should have done exactly as you did. My father's final message was not just about you, Jake. It was about our entire culture. He was telling us that we have forgotten something important. What's that? The value of honest work and simple kindness. We have become so focused on status and power that we look down on those who actually keep our civilization running. The engineers, the technicians, the people who maintain the systems we depend on. My father saw that as a failure of our values. So the blessing was a message. Yes, and you have delivered it perfectly by simply being yourself. You turned down wealth and status. You continue doing your work. You treat everyone with the same respect, from emperors to cargo ship crews. You are living proof of my father's final wisdom. Jake wasn't comfortable being proof of anything, but he understood what she meant. What happens now? That depends on our people. Some will accept my father's message. Others will reject it. The debate will continue for years, perhaps decades, but change has begun. And what do you want from me? Only what you have already given. Continue your work, be honest, treat people with dignity. You do not need to do anything special. You simply need to be who you are. I can do that. X stood and Jake rose as well. Thank you for bringing warmth to my father's final days. Both the heating system and the conversation mattered to him. He died at peace because of you. Jake left the Imperial wing feeling slightly better about the situation. At least the new Empress wasn't demanding anything from him. He could just keep doing his job. But the changes continued. Over the following months, Jake noticed shifts in how Draconians treated service workers on the station. More respect, more courtesy. Several young Draconians started apprenticing with various technicians and engineers, choosing practical skills over purely administrative or military paths. Lisa told him about a new initiative in the Draconian Empire to honor skilled craftspeople. Mentioned that applications to technical schools had increased by 30%. Small changes, but real ones. Jake kept taking jobs. He fixed climate control systems, repaired air filtration units, solved problems with water recycling. Draconian clients became common in his schedule. Most were professional and polite. A few were still hostile, clinging to traditional views. Jake treated them all the same. One day, a Draconian teenager showed up at his shop. The kid was maybe 15 standard years, scales still bright with youth, clearly nervous. Are you Jake? The teenager asked. I am. What can I do for you? I want to learn to be a technician like you. My family says it's not a proper path for someone of our house, but I don't care. I want to fix things. I want to help people. Jake looked at the kid and saw determination mixed with fear. Fear of disappointing family, fear of choosing the wrong path, but also hope. What's your name? Do you know anything about environmental systems? Only basics, temperature regulation, airflow, pressure maintenance. I've been studying on my own. Jake pulled out a broken air filter assembly from his parts bin. Tell me what's wrong with this. Examined it carefully, turning it over in his hands. The filter medium is clogged, but that's not the main problem. The seal is damaged here. He pointed to a crack in the housing. Air is bypassing the filter entirely. Good eye, what's the fix? Replace the filter medium and repair or replace the housing seal. Otherwise, unfiltered air will continue to contaminate the system. Jake nodded. You've got the basics. Learning the rest takes time and practice. I can't take on a formal apprentice right now, but if you want to come by after your school hours, I'll teach you what I can. His eyes widened. Really? You would do that? If you're serious about learning, I'm serious about teaching. But understand this, it's hard work. It's not glamorous. You'll be crawling through access tunnels and dealing with systems that have been neglected for years. Some people will look down on you for choosing this path. I know, I don't care. I want to do something real, something that matters. Then we'll start tomorrow. Be here at 1400 hours. Left looking happier than when he had arrived. Lisa stopped by later, and Jake told her about the new student. You're taking on an apprentice. Not formally, just teaching when I have time. Jake, do you realize that kid is from house, own family? Should that matter? Lisa laughed. No, it shouldn't. But it's interesting that one of the leading diplomatic houses now has a member learning to be a technician. More ripples from that blessing. The ripples kept spreading. Jake worked, taught, lived his life. The mark on his palm was just part of him now, like a scar or a tattoo. It glowed when he worked with heating systems, and sometimes people stared at it, but mostly life returned to a comfortable normal. 6 months after the Emperor's death, Jake received a private message. It was from Empress X. Jake, I wanted you to know that the changes you began have continued to grow. Applications to technical and engineering programs across the Empire have doubled. Public opinion of skilled trades has improved significantly. My father's message is taking root. You have done more for relations between our peoples than decades of formal diplomacy. You did it simply by being a good person who does good work. Thank you. Jake read the message twice, then deleted it. He didn't need recognition or thanks. He had his work, his shop, and now a student to teach. That was enough. The next morning, showed up early, eager to learn. Jake handed him a toolkit and pointed to a climate control unit that needed servicing. Let's see what you remember from last week. A year passed since Jake had fixed the Emperor's heating system. Station harmony continued its usual rhythms, ships docking and departing, species mixing in the neutral corridors, business and diplomacy flowing together. Jake's shop remained busy, but the chaos had settled into something manageable. Had become a skilled apprentice. The young Draconian showed up every day after his academic classes, eager to learn and quick to understand. Jake taught him everything he knew about environmental systems, from basic maintenance to complex repairs. His family had eventually accepted his choice, especially after Empress X personally praised the young man's dedication to practical skills. Check the pressure readings again, Jake said, watching work on a water recycling unit. Something's off. Studied the displays, then adjusted a valve setting. There, the flow was restricted in the secondary loop. Good catch. Always trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even if the readings look acceptable. Lisa stopped by the shop during her lunch break, as she often did. You too look busy. Ship from the Antares system needs a full climate overhaul, Jake explained, taking advantage of the docking time to do it right. Jake, you have 3 other jobs scheduled for today. I know, can handle the simple maintenance calls now, he's ready. Look surprised and pleased. Are you certain? You've been working with me for a year. You know the basics better than most certified technicians. Time to start taking solo jobs. Jake handed him a tablet with the job details: 2 filter replacements and a temperature calibration. Nothing complicated. If you run into problems, call me. After left, nervous but determined, Lisa sat in one of the work chairs. You're good with him, patient. He wants to learn, that makes teaching easy. You know there are 5 other Draconian students on the station now, all of them studying technical fields. 3 humans, 2, and I have asked if you're taking more apprentices. Jake focused on his work, uncomfortable with the attention. I'm not running a school, I just helped one kid who wanted to learn. That one kid is part of a major cultural shift. The Draconian Empire is changing, Jake, all because you treated an old man with kindness. The Empire is changing because Empress X is a good leader who listened to her father's final message. I just fixed a heater. Lisa smiled. You really believe that, don't you? It's the truth. A communication came through on Jake's device. He checked it and found a repair request from a Draconian medical ship. Their environmental systems were failing, and they had patients who needed specific climate conditions. It was urgent. I need to go, Jake said, grabbing his emergency toolkit. Medical emergency. He made his way to the medical ship's docking port. The captain met him there, a female Draconian named Axe who looked exhausted and worried. We have 12 patients in critical care, she explained as they hurried through the ship. 3 different species, all requiring different temperature and atmospheric conditions. Our main climate control failed 6 hours ago. We've been running backup systems, but they're not designed for long-term use. Jake assessed the situation quickly. The main control system had suffered a catastrophic failure, likely from long-term neglect. The backup systems were straining to maintain conditions for patients with wildly different needs. How long until we can transfer patients to the station? 4 hours minimum. The station's medical facility needs to prepare specialized environments. Then, we need to keep your backup systems running for 4 hours and keep your patients stable. Jake worked faster than he had in months, routing power, adjusting flows, balancing pressures. Showed up halfway through, having finished his solo jobs and heard about the emergency on the station network. What can I do? Asked. Section 3 needs pressure adjustments. I'll handle sections 1 and 2. They worked together, master and apprentice, solving problems as they emerged. The backup systems were failing one by one, forcing Jake to improvise solutions with whatever materials the ship had available. He bypassed damaged components, rerouted systems, and maintained the delicate balance of environments that kept 12 patients alive. The mark on his palm glowed steadily as he worked with the heating systems, brighter than Jake had ever seen it. He didn't have time to think about what it meant. He just focused on the work. 3 hours and 40 minutes after Jake arrived, the last backup system began to fail. Jake had one more adjustment to make, one more connection to secure. His hands moved with absolute certainty, guided by a year of experience and something else, something the Emperor had given him. The connection held, the system stabilized. 20 minutes later, the station's medical team arrived to transfer the patients. All 12 survived. Jake sat on the deck of the medical ship, exhausted and covered in grime. That was the most difficult repair I've ever seen, said quietly. You did well, couldn't have managed it without you. The blessing, it glowed so bright, I've never seen it do that before. Jake looked at his palm. The mark was faint again, barely visible. It seems to respond to the work. The more critical the situation, the stronger it gets. Do you understand it now? What the Emperor gave you? Maybe, I think it's not about making me special. It's about recognizing that the work itself is special. Keeping people safe, keeping them comfortable, solving problems that matter. The blessing doesn't change what I do. It just acknowledges why it's worth doing. Captain Axe approached them, her expression serious. You saved 12 lives today. What is your fee? Jake calculated the hours and materials. 2,000 credits, standard emergency rate. Standard rate, you performed a miracle. You kept 12 patients alive with failing systems and improvised solutions. That is worth far more. It's worth what it's worth, 2,000 credits. Axe studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. The Emperor chose well. You honor your craft more than those who seek wealth from it. Back at the shop, Jake found a message waiting from the Empress. She had heard about the medical ship and wanted to express her gratitude. Jake didn't respond. He just cleaned his tools and prepared for the next day's work. Stayed late helping organize the shop. Jake, why do you not take credit for the good you do? You could be wealthy, you could be famous, the blessing gives you that right. The blessing gives me nothing except a reminder. A reminder that honest work done well is its own reward. My father taught me that. The Emperor understood it. I'm not going to forget it just because people want to make me into something I'm not. What are you, then? Jake smiled. I'm a repair technician. I fix environmental systems. I help people stay comfortable. That's enough. Is it enough for you? Yes, because every day I solve problems that matter. I help people, I teach you. I do work that needs doing. What else could I want? Thought about that to be happy. I am happy. This work makes me happy. Teaching you makes me happy. Going home tired knowing I did something useful makes me happy. That's more than a lot of people can say. The young draconian nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. That's what the Emperor saw in you. You already knew what he spent a lifetime learning. Maybe, or maybe we both just figured out that life is simple if you let it be. Find work worth doing. Do it well, treat people with respect. Help when you can, that's the whole philosophy. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. Jake's shop remained busy. He trained until the young draconian was ready to start his own repair business. More students came seeking knowledge, and Jake taught them when he had time. The draconian cultural shift continued, with technical fields gaining respect and honor throughout the empire. Occasionally, people still asked Jake about the blessing, about being honored by an emperor, about the changes he had inspired. He always gave the same answer. He had fixed a heater for an old man who was cold. Everything else was just people trying to make something simple into something complicated. 2 years after that first repair, Jake received one final message from Empress X. She wanted him to know that the Empire had established the X Fellowship, a program to honor skilled craftspeople and technicians. Recipients would receive recognition and support for their work, acknowledging that practical skills deserved as much respect as military or political achievements. The first recipient was for his dedication to learning and his work on the medical ship emergency. Jake felt proud of his former apprentice. He read the rest of the message. X thanked him one final time for showing her people a better path. She said her father's wisdom lived on through Jake's example. She asked nothing more of him except that he continue being who he was. Jake deleted the message and looked around his shop. Tools hanging in their places, parts organized on shelves, a schedule full of repair jobs waiting to be done. This was his life. This was what he had chosen, and it was good. The mark on his palm caught the light, a faint golden reminder of one conversation with a dying emperor. Jake had brought warmth to that old man's final days, and somehow that simple act had changed an empire. But Jake knew the truth. He hadn't changed anything. He had simply lived according to the values he believed in. The empire changed itself when it decided those values were worth following. His comm device chimed with a new repair request. A merchant ship needed their climate control serviced. Jake grabbed his toolkit and headed out. Just another job, just another person who needed help staying comfortable, just another day of doing work that mattered. The blessing on his palm glowed softly as he walked through the station corridors, heading toward the docking bay. Not because he was special, not because he was chosen, but because he was about to do what he had always done: bring warmth where there was cold, solve problems that needed solving, and help people in practical, meaningful ways. That was enough, that had always been enough, and Jake was happy with that simple truth. Behind him, students learned their trades. Across the empire, cultural shifts continued. Throughout the galaxy, people talked about the human technician who had received an imperial blessing for fixing a heater. But none of that mattered as much as the work itself. Jake reached the merchant ship and met the captain at the airlock. "Thank you for coming so quickly," the captain said. "Our crew is getting cold." Jake smiled and held up his toolkit. "Let's see what we can do about that." And he went to work, hands steady and purpose clear, bringing warmth to those who needed it, one repair at a time. Life went on, systems broke down and needed fixing. People needed help staying comfortable, and Jake kept bringing warmth to those who were cold, one repair at a time. Chose well, you honor your craft. Jake left the ship feeling like maybe, just maybe, things might work out after all. What had he gotten himself into? Because that's who this was, Jake realized. He was fixing a heater for the Emperor of the Draconian Empire. And somehow, that didn't seem as important as making sure an old person wasn't suffering from the cold. He got back to work, his hands steady and his mind focused on the problem in front of him. Behind him, the Emperor watched in silence, and the warmth slowly began to return.